So I'm going to give you guys a little bit of an introduction to the quick history of the class and where we're coming from and why we're doing opinion polls in this particular class. So let's get going. So we've been doing various things in this class, and I should also note that anybody that is interested in this, that it is of interest, we have a weekly meeting that actually starts right after this class. So that's our aerial and aquatic robotic research group, and that's folks from across campus. So you guys are welcome. You're welcome to come and just sit in and hang out for the first time, just see, and if it's lame, leave. But we have a variety of projects, and sometimes that involves developing tech. So right now, Joe and who else? I don't see anybody else in here. We're working on pairing a bridge so we can use LiDAR, so we can do point cloud stuff. And so we seem to do we used to build a lot of stuff. We don't really build much stuff anymore because it's so cheap these days to get these devices. And so now we pretty much just buy commercial products and tweak the commercial products. And that's a much more efficient way and probably much more akin to what you guys would do in a consulting firm or agency, whatever, where you might go. So developing tech is awesome, but that ends up being the whole focus is the developing tech. And we really got into this field because we think it's an important tool for you guys to gather data. So we don't so much care about the platforms, we care about the data and the information that we can garner from this stuff. While we use them all over the place, primarily we use them in our facility here to do coastal-based mapping. So what things look like or how things are changing along the coast in various settings. This is a fixed wing that's used by our partners at NOAA. That's based on a technology originally developed for the Department of Defense. And then just to say that these things are, you guys know this, right? But these things are really everywhere. So this is no sound, great. Anyway, this is just a little teeny unit from one of the largest manufacturers, DJI. And this is just up in, so my son's scout troop, we do a winter survival camp every year. This weekend is the weekend of it. And this was just a little unit that one of the guys brought with them. So these units can fit in literally your back pocket these days and be really useful for getting insights, safety stuff, as well as sort of data collection and fun. A lot of these devices can actually follow you around now if you wear a watch or you wear some tracking device. They truly are everywhere. So this is one of our classes. You guys know that we do these classes at different places around the world. This is the Cook Islands, and this is a small island in the South Pacific, a few hours flight from New Zealand. This is a big atoll, and you can't see it, but right to the left is the airport. So to the left is where these large planes take off and land. And we were there, and we went to this pristine beach, awesome beach, right? It looks very pretty and picturesque and like in a movie and stuff. And then all of a sudden you hear, like, what the hell is that? And because we have our drones, but we're like, wait a second, it wasn't us. If we're doing it, it's fine. But so that was what's called a Phantom 3, another product from DJI. And it's up there way too high in the flight path of the airport. And so we're looking around and who's doing it and who's doing it. The other thing with this technology is it is so cheap and it is so powerful and it is so distributed, you don't necessarily know who's doing it. Back in the day when you were looking at people doing RC airplanes, they had a big control box and they were usually standing somewhere near it and it was pretty easy to see. Nowadays it can be very difficult to locate who is the operator. So we walked around the beach for a while. We finally found this dude, and he was a Kiwi. He was a New Zealander. He was sitting there, old dude, and he's things way up high, and we're like, what are you doing? He's like, I'm flying a drone. I was like, that's okay. So there's an airport here? Yeah, the airport. Who cares? We're like, oh yeah, well the airplanes might be flying here. That's maybe not a good deal. Like, oh, that's fine. And then the thing started going right and started going left, and we're like, what's up? We started talking to him. It was his first time he ever flew it. So he bought the product or mail ordered it or did whatever he did, got it, put it on the airplane with him, flew to this crazy tropical locale, and he's like, I'm going to get some beautiful photos. And so again, the technology is so powerful. It's easy for folks that don't have training, that don't know the rules, or don't care about the rules, to just get up and go do stuff. That's obviously dangerous for resources, for people, et cetera, but it's also dangerous for you as future users of this technology, because those folks can screw it up for a bunch of us, right? So if they create concern, worry, and usage clamps down, that's problematic for us if we're trying to use these devices in an oil spill, in wildfire monitoring, or what have you. And then this is, I don't think it matters about the sound here. So this is right there everywhere. So this is the Super Bowl a couple years ago, and this is drones. So one of our alumni now actually runs this program, or works for this program, or is a project manager for this. This is Intel's autonomous drone project, where they have thousands of drones that fly in coordinated patterns and do advertising up in the sky and all that kind of good stuff. He just did one with the Rockettes over Christmas time. And then, of course, there's bad things too that happens with this stuff. So this is a propaganda video that's no longer up on YouTube, but this is an ISIS propaganda video. So ISIS is doing this, and this is a lot of this is faked, right? But the idea is they want to strike fear into people's understanding of international relationships and terrorism and all that kind of stuff. And these devices are so cheap that anybody can get these, not just so we started off with the bad guys doing it, quote unquote. These are the quote unquote good guys, and so they're using an off-the-shelf Phantom 4. This is now the Iraqi army that's using this to spot snipers, and they literally have the same exact technology that's on that shelf right there, and they're just flying around in a war zone with this stuff. So again, it is crazy how much penetration this technology has gotten in just a very few number of years. So we use the term here remotely piloted systems because we're nerdy, and because we use underwater stuff as well as flying stuff. We're probably not going to do much with the underwater stuff, but depending on weather and stuff, it might work out where maybe Joe could give us a demo one day. But really the control technology is similar for underwater, crawling, underground, flying stuff. And so we use the term remotely piloted systems to apply to all of these types of things. There's a lot of terminology. A lot of the terminology has come because a lot of this technology was developed in the military. A lot of this technology has come from the military, and that's had some implications for how people think about these technologies, both the words we use to describe them, but also what their capabilities are. And that's one of the things we'll look at in the poll. Robot is a word we can use for these things too, right? A lot of these things basically fit the definition of what we would traditionally call a robot. So they're not artificial intelligence necessarily, but they really are a unit that's going about doing its stuff without us being next to it, for example. Couple quick terms, things like multi-rotor, that's one of these helicopter type things with more than one propeller. Quadcopter is usually what most people talk about. That's one with a multi-rotor with 4 propellers. There's all kinds of acronyms you'll learn about, FAA, et cetera, blah, blah, blah. And these things you guys need to know. You guys need to know for 107 and for conversing with experts in the field. The general public doesn't know this. So the general public has a much smaller spectrum of terminologies for these items, and that's one of the things we'll look at as well, because it turns out how we refer to these things seems to be having a huge effect in terms of if people think they're beneficial, if people think they're dangerous. So the wording can be very, very important when you go to work for your agency or you go to work for your consulting firm or whatever, and you want to use these devices. Before we talk about the poll, just a little bit of the brief history of these things. I'm sure Alan and Gene will talk more about this, but this is how we got started. So this is a Delta Wing that's downstairs in one of our embedded systems labs. And this was what started off our program. So I don't even know, 7 years ago, I guess now? 7 years or so ago, some folks approached us and wanted to donate this. So this is essentially a developmental platform. And so this has a propeller in the back. It's not on because it's up against the wall. But the propeller is right here, would be right there. And then this is an airplane. And this was primarily put together to test some communication signaling devices. It wasn't meant to necessarily be a great mapping device or something like that. And so this was old. This was built, what was this built out in like 2001-ish, something like that. So this is like way old technology, like way too big, way too, but so these people didn't need it anymore, the folks that were playing with it. So, hey, you guys want it? Because you guys at university, maybe you can use it. And we said, yeah, sure. So yeah, we'll take the 2 of them, there's 2 of them. And you can see they've been crashed and they've been broken and stuff, like, yeah, we'll take it, right? And so we're taking it, but it was considered a gift, a donation, so we have to go through the legal paperwork of donating. And when we got to the last step, our then president, President Rush, our first president, said, no, we don't want that stuff on our campus. And I and some of my fellow faculty said, whoa, why don't we want that? We want that. Like, who's going to turn down free stuff, right? And he said, well, the problem is with all these things, people think of these things and they think of Iraq and they think of Afghanistan and they think of blowing up, they think of spying on people, they think of being dangerous and all that kind of stuff. And we said, no, we don't want to blow anybody up. We don't want to spy on anybody, right? We just think that might be useful. So to his credit, he said, well, maybe I'm wrong. So here's the deal, though. I am worried about safety. I am worried about security and all those kind of things. So can you go make a policy for us? And like, oh my God, it sucks, right? Because then that's like policy and it's bureaucracy. So that took us about 1.5 years to work through a policy for our campus. And long story short, we thought we were way at the back and so far behind everybody else. Turns out we were actually in the front. So our policy is now required or equivalent or better than our policies required of the 23 other CSU campuses. Many community colleges use our policy to do their programs. And a lot of research universities are using elements of it as well. So it turns out we thought we were behind everybody. Actually, we were not. And so it all started with those things. But there's a huge history that we don't have time to go into in this class, but it's a wonderful thing to think about if maybe you guys want to think about that as one of your paper topics or when you're writing up the poll results. But we've had this history of automatons, automated technology. This is one of the first ones. This is the Mechanical Turk. This was not an automaton. This is not a robot. It was a fake. It was a famous fake that people would take around to parlors in Europe, and it would look like there was a robot predicting cards and playing chess and beating people in chess and things like that. It was actually a dude jammed in here, this little box. But people thought, oh my God, that was the first real widespread perception of robots or things that weren't human that were being animated and could do stuff that might be what we might consider smart. Huge history, but really once we started inventing airplanes, people really quickly started thinking about autonomous technology. And so this is an example of one from 1916. The Germans really did a lot of this stuff in World War II. And so they were mostly, so this is the V2 rocket, but they were also doing things like target drones that were being controlled by radio dials and stuff. So there's a long history of this. Again, a lot of this is military. We started seeing more faster things in the 1950s and in the Vietnam War. And then the first Gulf War, in that era, the early 90s, we really started to see these large scale, these are basically airplane sized robots. And there's Predators and Reapers and all those kind of things. And this technology has obviously gone leaps and bounds. So a lot of people see this technology as the same as this airplane right here on the table. Different. I mean, well, they both go up in the air and they both can, fly themselves and do stuff. But this is a whole different ballgame than what we're talking about. These types of devices can stay up for days on end, weeks on end at times. They have, encrypted communication. They're designed to spy on people and gather intel and that kind of stuff. That's not what we're doing. And it turns out this approach was very, very powerful to get some of the physics and things like that going. But now the stuff on our shelf is more, not with the encrypted technology, but with the flight stabilization, that kind of stuff. The stuff in our lab here is more advanced than this. So crowdsourcing, open sourcing, the market, the free market, this technology is developed so much faster than what the military folks have. It's pretty crazy. And this was the big thing, and this is what everybody thinks is a drone, right? This is one flavor. This is DJI, and this first one came out in 2006 and really changed the marketplace. This is the Apple, this is the iPhone of drones. So very cool, very turnkey, very slick and everything, but also on the expensive side. Also hard to get inside of it. Another big game changer was this company, 3D Robotics. Same thing, very small, very, very cheap, affordable, but these guys were primarily designed with open architecture. So this would be more like the Android type of analogy, or the PC type of analogy, where it's much easier to get inside and mess around with it. Turns out 3D hasn't done too well, and they've kind of disappeared. But they haven't entirely disappeared, but they've shrunk massively. So DJI has been the winner in this global competitive race. So we started this class several years ago, and initially we had to be inside because of the FAA rules. So initially we had to have these special permits to fly, which we had, but there was no category for you guys as students. So you could fly as a hobbyist, you could fly as a commercial person, but you guys, for me teaching you guys, there was no policy on that. So for the first few years, it was totally, we had to do these crazy things like fly inside and things of that nature. And then May the 4th came around in 2016, there was announced this thing that we just mentioned, the Part 107, right? And so that did two things. So the Part 107 came out just after, they announced it would come out after this, but also what they said at this point in time, you guys, all of you right now, are going to be considered by the FAA hobbyists. So when you're in this class, when you're in an official class, you're a hobbyist. So that means you don't need a 107 to fly these devices, and it's all legal and legit. So if we're doing a class activity, we're not skirting the law or permissions or anything like that. And the Part 107s, as we'll hear about, have blown up, and they're all over the place, and there's more and more all the time. But again, the real concern that this probably won't work with the volume, I guess. So this is a news story from December. Yesterday happened in Newark, New Jersey, right? So in this case, this was Gatwick Airport in the UK, the second largest airport in the UK, shut down because some folks were flying these devices too close to where the planes were taking off and landing and that kind of stuff, and people weren't sure what the heck was going on. These concerns are real, okay? It's not just some weird FAA person or whatever. These are real concerns. So this is the LAPD a few years ago. LAPD is like, let's get some drones. Sure, that sounds cool. Where'd they get their drones from? They got their drones super cheap, like 20% of the cost of the drones, from the Seattle Police Department. Why did they get them from the Seattle Police Department? Because the Seattle Police Department bought them and started to fly them, and people were like, screw this, we don't want this, we want to get rid of them. So the Seattle Police Department's got to sell them to someone. So of course the LAPD is like, we'll buy them. And it's caused this huge uproar. So people are very concerned about personal privacy. They're worried about spying, all that kind of stuff. In contrast, we use drones also in our county. Our Ventura County Sheriff uses drones. They didn't go out and buy drones. They started with going to the county supervisors. They started with public outreach meetings. And they said, hey, we think this might be useful for search and rescue. We think this might be useful in a disaster situation and various, looking for missing children, that kind of stuff. But is that okay? And so there was a dialogue that started beforehand. And then once everybody's like, yeah, it seems okay, then they started purchasing their equipment. And even now they're very, I would say, hesitant to use them, right? They don't just bring it out willy-nilly. So we need to, in a democracy, really respect what's going on, right? And as you guys know from ESRM, one of the whole philosophies, whole things we're trying to do here is make sure we have effective change, right? Help the planet, help people. And you don't do that by just getting some new scary technology and just throwing it at people. You have to understand that some people would have some nervousness or trepidation. And that doesn't mean they're stupid, and that doesn't mean that they're dumb or anti-you or something, or anti-progress. It means we need to have a true dialogue with them. And so that's one of the reasons we're doing this poll as well. I mentioned our policy, but this is the kind of stuff that you guys, I'll just, 2 quick data slides and then we'll finish up here. But this is the kind of data that you guys will get. And so those of you that are in coastal, we actually ask 2 of these questions in our coastal poll, so they might look familiar to you. But this example data is from 2014, but it's the same pattern we've seen over and over again. And so in this case, we ask, and you guys will ask, hey, so what do you think of if you were out and about and you saw a small unmanned aerial vehicle? What would you think about that, right? And so people could say they really thought it was bad, or I don't know, I can't make up my mind, or it was good or very good, or they just don't know. And so most of our questions will follow this pattern, which is people can say something, but they can also say, I don't know, or I'm unsure. So we don't force anybody to say yes or no in most cases. Sometimes we do, but mostly we don't. And so what you get is, and when you watch the news, there's all this stuff, wildfires, and just yesterday, right, in Newark, New Jersey, these drones shut down the airport, and drones suck, and drones are problems, right? And so the impression from news stories, might be negative, right? On average. Of course, there's positive stories, but on average, worries, concerns, potential dangers, unless you're reading like technological journals or industry type publications. And so that's what we see in our data. So we see that people have the stories about drones and people's impressions of drones if they saw one out and about is generally more negative than positive, right? So about roughly 2 to 1. But that's not the important part. The important part is the fact that if we add up the neutral and the unsure, that's about 60%, right? Ish. It fluctuates each year, but about that. So almost 2/3 consistently from year to year, and we'll see if you guys find it, I suspect you will, haven't made up their mind. They don't think they're bad. They don't think they're great. And so these are the folks that we need to engage with and talk about them. How can we have it? What are the effective, safe rules for using this stuff? And et cetera. So it's not, sometimes we get sucked into the yes-nos of the world. And a lot of the world is more gray than that. And so this polling stuff will help us explore that too. And then we'll also have questions like this. So this is from the very first year we did this poll. So this is a relatively small sample size. But we can ask questions like that gets at people's understanding, what their fears are, et cetera. So in this case, what do you think about private people using this technology? What do you think about people doing official commercial things, utilities or something like that, monitoring their farm crops or whatever? Or what do you think about police using this? And so, we can break this down and we can start to ask, what are the areas? So it turns out the area that people are most, this is another question, but one of the areas people are most supportive of is in search and rescue. So using this types of technology in search and rescue. And we'll see what you guys find, but it'll be in the likely high 90s percent of people that support this technology for that kind of stuff. The next most popular use, or people in general say that is an acceptable use of this technology, is what you guys are doing right here, research. So academic research, that kind of stuff. And then a lot of other stuff fall off. And does anybody want to make a guess of what historically at least has been the least, the group that people are least happy in our society with using this technology? Military is low, but it's not the lowest. What was the other one? Police is really, really low. There actually is one group lower than the police consistently. Terrorists. Nope. We don't ask about terrorists. Maybe we should add terrorists in there.
Are terrorists you agree with or disagree with?
This is like people around Ventura County that might be using this. So police are low, but there's a group that consistently people are less want to have this technology than even the police. Good.
Environmentalists.
No. Reporters. Very interestingly, people really don't like reporters to have this technology, and you think that's kind of weird because, right? They could use it. So we've had people contact us and we've helped interpret some of their drone videos for like oil spills and things of that nature, where people say there's no oil spill in here, and they fly a drone up and look down like, oh, there's a bunch of oil on the ground and guys in beekeeper suits. Like, I think there is actually oil being spilled there. And then the people say, oh yeah, no, what we meant was, yes, we're cleaning it up, right? So there is that sort of, citizen, watchdog kind of role of the media, but apparently most people think that they'd rather the media not see stuff that they're doing, which is an interesting thing. So, okay. So we have a bunch of questions that we'll get to, and so we'll have some in-person surveys, and we probably will do the online survey. It's gotten a little weird with some of the venues that we've distributed surveys with the government shutdown. It's unclear how that might work, but nevertheless, the one thing we'll definitely start with is our in-person surveys. So you guys have to do 30 surveys and then type them in. So it's not 70 or 80 or anything like that we've done in the past. It's 30. And so we have the online version. If you say you haven't flown a drone before, it drops out a bunch of the questions. The printed version that you guys are going to do, right? We want to save paper, and so what you'll do is say, hey, would you mind taking the survey for me? And say okay, and then say, hey, have you ever flown a drone before? And if they say yes, you can give them this one version that has more questions. And say no, you can give them a shorter one. And so So that's what we do, and so that's going to be so Monday the 25th of February is when we're shooting for to have that completed. I'll have to talk with Alan and Jean if that really works. We might push it a little bit farther or later, but that's the idea. So you have about 3-4 weeks to get this stuff done, and our target area: Los Angeles County, Ventura County, Santa Barbara County. So public places, any public places. Other than that, you can't do it on campus because we bias. But basically, you guys can go to any mall, beach, anything like that. And so we're trying to get a cross section of folks. So we're not trying to do all the people in your apartment complex or anything like that, right? We're trying to get a representative sample. And we'll talk more about that later. And then once we have this up and I sort of go through and just clean it up, we will have a brief write-up that you guys can talk about any aspect of stuff. So I'm going to shut up now. I've sent you guys all a link. So the link I've sent you, before you look at it or anything like that, so the link I've sent you is the last year's poll. And so we're going to drop a few questions from there. But every year things change. So this year, one of the things that's happened is there seems to be a lot more airport closures, right? We have a question or two about that. We might want to ask a question about that. The poll has a lot of questions that we ask year to year to year to year, so we can look at changing perceptions, and a lot of those we have to ask the same way. But others are more kind of wink on, wink off as issues pop up. So I'd like you guys to take that survey, and then afterwards we can have a discussion about if there's something that you're really burning to know about that we don't address in there. Cool? Okay. So with that, yeah, Joe.
Are we gonna get these surveys by end of the week, or so we can start working on getting the content?
Well, yes. So first, I got to hear back from you guys about if there's something that we want to add in. Yeah. Cool. And so with that, I'm going to turn it back over to Jean or Alan, or unless you guys want to take a 5-10 minute break.